G'day everyone and welcome to the round 20 AFL fantasy wrap-up video after what was a pretty tough round to navigate that one, especially with the Stephen Cornelio laid out right before the start of the Giants game on Saturday, which just threw a huge spanner in the works for most teams, mine included this week. But in the end my team scored 22.82, which is just okay at best I think, and as a result I held my ranking, now sitting just outside the top 1,000 once again, but it was still a little disappointing round considering I had the two highest scorers of the round in Merritt and Marshall, but it was just the rest of my team really let me down this week. So looking back at the trades that I made going into the round now, and they were O'Brien to Gawn and Chalor to Petrarca. Now, basically I really wanted Max Gawn in my team this week, especially at the price. He was just too good of an option to ignore for me, so I was keen to bring him in, and then I had a midfield spot to fill, but didn't have much cash to play with, so I ended up settling on Petrarca, which was a bit of a gamble considering he scored a 67 the week before and hadn't been in amazing form before that. But I thought at that price he was a good enough option, and he played pretty well on Friday night, so it turned out pretty well in the end. So looking back at the team now, starting in defence, Jack Sinclair, 96. He copped some attention from the Hawks throughout that game, but he seemed to fight through it pretty well, so he was good. Sam Doherty, 119. Another very good score, just Doherty doing what Doherty does, really. Jordan Dawson, 104. He's been good without being amazing, but he's a top 6 defender, so we take that from him. Jack Crisp, 64. Not too sure what's happened to Crisp. He just isn't firing whatsoever at the moment, and I think he's well and truly on the chopping block now for most people this week. James Sicily, 67. He's been similar to Crisp. He hasn't been great recently, and he's also another one that we can look to trade now, I think. And Massimo D'Ambrosio, 46, who I actually had to field this week. He was my cover for Cornelio, so I flicked Daniel forward and chose to field Massimo. And 46 is not ideal, but just got to cop it, unfortunately. Onto the midfield now. Jack Steele, 107. He played a pretty decent game, I thought. Perhaps a touch disappointing that he didn't quite pump out a 120 to 130 type of score in what looked to be a nice matchup against the Hawks, but he was still pretty solid. Zach Merritt, 172, and wow, wasn't this something? He was on 37 at half time and then had a whopping 135-point second half, which is just phenomenal. And I think he had a 75-point third quarter and then backed it up with a 60-point final quarter. And I don't think I've ever seen something like that in fantasy. Someone scoring that many points in so little time. And well done to anyone who had him captain this week. That would have been a really good watch. Tuke Miller, 122 as captain this week, which I was very happy with. He's had a very good season once again, Tuke Miller, and he's one of the most consistent players in the comp. Andy Brayshaw, 137. He was fantastic on Friday night. One of Freo's only good players in that game against the D's. And I probably should have backed him in and VC'd him, and that would have been handy, but oh well. Jack Macrae, 72. He just continues to be very disappointing this season, Macrae, and he only had the 21 disposals in that game, which is just so unlike Macrae. You usually see him getting his 25 to 30 each week, so he's been disappointing. Lachie Neale, 100. He hasn't been amazing of late, but at least he turned up this week. Ben Keys, 89. This was an interesting one as he actually played forward and kicked 3 goals and didn't actually attempt a single centre bounce. So while he played a great game, that doesn't bode well for fantasy. So he might be someone that I look to trade out this week. Christian Petrarca, who I brought in this week, 110, which I was very happy with. And as I mentioned earlier, it was a bit of a gamble bringing him in off the back of a very poor game the week before, but he definitely delivered for me this week, that's for sure. Onto the rucks now. Tim English, 73. He was disappointing. A lot of the Dogs boys really struggled to score well in that game down in Geelong, so hopefully he bounces back next week. Max Gawn, who I brought in this week, 87. He was a little underwhelming, but I'm still happy that I traded him in as, on any given week he can pump out a 140, so you just got to be patient with him, I think, and I still think he's a great option to bring in this week for those that don't have him. Onto the forwards now. Marcus Bontempelli, 86. He was a bit sore throughout that game. He ended up spending a lot of time forward, so it was a pretty good effort from him in the end. Bailey Smith, 65. He wasn't great. That was his second bad score now against Geelong this season, so I think back at Marvel next week he should be much better. Josh Dunkley, 119. He was great. He kicked a couple of goals, took some great marks, so I was happy with him. Rowan Marshall, 163, and yeah, it was fair to say that I wasn't expecting this good a score from Marshall this week, especially after Thursday night when Campbell was actually named for the Saints originally. And yeah, funny thing is, I actually considered trading Marshall to Gawn instead of O'Brien to Gawn purely because Campbell was named. And yeah, luckily I kept him. I kept Marshall in the end as yeah, Campbell was laid out and Marshall went on to score 163, which was just enormous. And yeah, he would be my number one trade target. For those that don't have him this week, he's just thrives when he's that number one ruck. Will Brodie, 104. He is just consistent as ever. What a season he has had. And Daniel Rioli, 58. He hasn't been great recently, but yeah, forced trade after forced trade, week in, week out. It's just made it so difficult to trade him. And as you can see there on the bench, I had no choice but to hold Cornelio this week as both of my trades were locked in by the time he was named or laid out. So hopefully he gets up for next week. Apparently it was just soreness, so he should be right to go. So now talk a bit about what my trade plans are at this stage heading into round 21. And yeah, what I'm looking to do this week is finally trade out Dan Rioli. Now, the options that I'm looking at in defence are Tom Stewart and Angus Brayshaw this week. And yeah, I think they're both great options this week. Angus Brayshaw actually moved into the midfield in that game against Fremantle, and he scored 108 and he looked really good. So I think he does keep that role now. And yeah, he's definitely a really good option at that price, 784k. For someone who's proven as a midfielder, I think he's a great option this week. And the other one is Tom Stewart, who returned off that suspension this week. He scored 96. I thought he was pretty good, and he'll definitely be better for that hit out. And he also has the Suns, Eagles, and St Kilda in his next three. Two of them in Geelong, so that is very good in Geelong. So yeah, he's another great option. So kind of deciding between Stewart and Brayshaw this week. Not too sure which way I'll go there. The other option that I could have a look at this week is, yeah, looking to trade out Ben Keys, who I mentioned played forward and didn't attend a centre bounce. So he's definitely one that I probably will need to trade either this week or next week. And yeah, then I could look to bring in someone like Clayton Oliver maybe, who hasn't been great since coming back from that farm injury, but he has the Pies coming up this week. He had a field day against them in that Queen's birthday game earlier in the year. So he would be the one that I'd look at for Ben Keys, I think. But yeah, it's either Rioli up to a defender or Keys up to a midfielder. That's what I'm kind of deciding between this week. In terms of some general trade targets that I'd recommend this week, obviously in defence, as I mentioned, Tom Stewart and Angus Brayshaw are two fantastic options this week, particularly at the price that they are now. Also, someone like Mason Redmond could be a nice, unique option. He's been flying of late, and I actually think he's a really good option for next year to consider as well. But yeah, if you want him to bring him in now, he could be a sneaky point of difference. In the midfield, obviously someone like Clayton Oliver, as I mentioned, he should have a strong last three games of the season, I think, and he's dropping in price now, so he's a good option this week. In the rucks, Max Gawn, I think, is still a great option. Don't be put off by his 87 last week. You just know that a 130, 140 score is just around the corner, so yeah, he's a great option this week. And in the forwards, Rowan Marshall, he would be my number one trade target in general this week, I think. He just thrives when he's that number one ruck, that solo ruck. And yeah, as we saw last week, he's got a huge ceiling as well, which I actually didn't think he had. So yeah, he's a fantastic option to bring in. He has Geelong this week, which is a little bit of a tough matchup, but yeah, he should be right, I think. So he's a great option there. So they're the trade targets in general that I don't mind this week. And that's all for today's video, guys. Thanks again for watching, and as always, it'd be much appreciated if you could like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what your trades are. I'm happy to give my thoughts on those as always. And yeah, good luck in round 21, everyone. Only 3 rounds to go. Thanks for watching, guys.